Imagine you could retire with a six-figure nest egg and pay next to nothing in taxes. What if the secret isn't a loophole for the ultra-rich, but a strategy most people never hear about until it's too late? That hidden pathway lies inside the rules that govern IRAs, and it's called the backdoor Roth conversion. It's a tax arbitrage trick that can turn a traditional retirement account into a tax-free vault, almost overnight. The good news? You don't need a Ph.D. in tax law to pull it off. The bad news? Most Americans never learn it, and they end up paying thousands of dollars more than they have to. Let's set the stage. The United States tax code treats retirement savings like a three-act play. In Act 1, you put money into a traditional IRA or a 401k, and the government lets you deduct that contribution from your taxable income. In Act 2, the money grows tax-deferred, meaning you don't see any tax bill while it's working for you. Finally, Act 3 arrives when you start pulling the money out in retirement, and the government takes a bite, usually at your ordinary income tax rate. That's the classic tax-deferred model that most people accept as the only game in town. Now picture a fourth act, a hidden scene that most viewers never see. The IRS allows you to convert a traditional IRA into a Roth IRA. A Roth is a different beast. You pay tax on the money before it goes in, but once it's inside, every future dollar grows completely tax-free, and qualified withdrawals never see the taxman again. The catch, according to the rulebook, is that you can only convert money you've already paid tax on, or you'll owe tax on the conversion amount. That sounds straightforward, but it also creates an arbitrage opportunity that clever savers have turned into a near tax-free retirement strategy. Here's where the backdoor Roth shines. The IRS sets income limits on who can contribute directly to a Roth IRA. If you earned more than $144,000 as a single filer, or $228,000 for married couples filing jointly in 2024, you're barred from making a direct Roth contribution. That's the wall most high earners hit. But the wall isn't a dead end. The tax code lets you make an after-tax contribution to a traditional IRA with no income limit, then immediately convert that money to a Roth. Because you contributed after tax, the conversion triggers little to no additional tax. The result is a backdoor route into a Roth, bypassing the income ceiling entirely. Why does this matter for retirement taxes? Because Roth accounts are the only retirement vehicle that lets you withdraw earnings tax-free, regardless of how high your tax bracket is in retirement. If you can lock in a low tax rate now and avoid any tax later, you essentially eliminate a massive chunk of your future tax liability. That's the core of the tax arbitrage. You trade a modest, predictable tax hit today for the certainty of zero tax later. Let's dig deeper with a concrete example. Meet Maya. She's a 45-year-old software engineer making $190,000 a year, married, and she's already maxing out her 401k at $22,500. She wants to stash extra cash for retirement, but the Roth income limits shut the door on a direct contribution. Maya opens a traditional IRA and contributes $6,500, the maximum allowed for 2024. Because her employer doesn't offer a workplace Roth, and because her income is too high for a direct Roth, this is her only legal avenue. Maya's contribution is after-tax dollars, so her basis in the traditional IRA is $6,500. The next day, she initiates a Roth conversion. The IRS treats the conversion as moving the entire $6,500 from the traditional to the Roth. Since she already paid tax on that money, the conversion tax bill is essentially zero. In a few short steps, Maya has slipped $6,500 into a Roth IRA, where it will grow tax-free for the next 20-30 years. Multiply that by the $6,500 she can contribute each year, and you're looking at over $200,000 of tax-free growth by the time she hits 65, assuming a modest 6% annual return. Now, you might wonder, what about the pro rata rule? That's the tax code's attempt to prevent people from cherry-picking only after-tax dollars for conversion, while ignoring any pre-tax balances they might have in other traditional IRAs. The rule says that when you convert, the IRS looks at the total balance across all of your traditional, SEP, and simple IRA, not just the one you're converting. The taxable portion of the conversion is proportional to the pre-tax balance versus the after-tax basis. In Maya's case, she has no other traditional IRA balances, so the pro rata calculation yields a 0% taxable portion. She's clean. But let's add a twist. Suppose Maya also has a rollover IRA containing $30,000 from a previous 401k. Now her total traditional IRA balance is $36,500, of which $6,500 is after-tax basis. The pro rata rule says the taxable portion of any conversion equals pre-tax balance divided by total balance times conversion amount. That works out to $30,000 divided by $36,500, approximately 82% taxable. If she converts the full $6,500, about $5,330 would be taxable, and she'd owe tax at her ordinary rate. That's a big hit. Here's the retention bump. Did you know that a simple IRA cleanse can eliminate that unwanted pre-tax balance? By moving the $30,000 into an employer-sponsored 401k that accepts rollovers, Maya can isolate the after-tax dollars in her traditional IRA. Once the pre-tax money is out of the IRA universe, the pro-rata rule no longer drags her down, and the backdoor conversion becomes tax-free again. The move is legal, it's common, and it's a strategy that turns a seemingly messy situation into a clean, tax-efficient pathway. The process of rolling pre-tax IRA funds into a 401k is often overlooked because many people assume their old 401k plans are closed or that the paperwork is too cumbersome. In reality, most large employers allow inbound rollovers, even if the plan is already active. The key is to request a direct trustee-to-trustee transfer, which avoids any mandatory tax withholding and keeps the tax-deferred status intact. Once the rollover is complete, the traditional IRA is left with only the after-tax contributions, ready for a clean backdoor Roth conversion. Let's walk through another real-world scenario, this time with a self-employed consultant named Louis. Louis earns $250,000 a year and operates as an S-corp. He contributes $30,000 to a solo 401k as employee deferral and profit sharing, maxing out the contribution limits. He also wants to save more, but the Roth income limits shut him out again. Louis opens a traditional IRA, puts in $6,500 after tax, and immediately converts to a Roth. Because Louis has no other traditional IRA balances, the conversion is tax-free. He repeats this each year, building a substantial Roth balance that will be completely tax-free at age 70.5. But Louis takes the strategy a step further. He notices that his solo 401k plan allows after-tax contributions up to $66,000 total, including employee deferral, profit sharing, and after-tax contributions. After maxing out the pre-tax portion, he can still add after-tax dollars, then execute an in-plan Roth conversion. This is known as a mega backdoor Roth. The mechanics are similar. Contribute after-tax dollars, then convert them to the plan's Roth side, where growth is tax-free. The difference is the contribution ceiling is dramatically higher, up to $66,000 versus $6,500 for an IRA. For high earners like Louis, that extra $60,000 of tax-free growth can mean millions in retirement wealth. Retention bump. Imagine turning a $60,000 contribution into $400,000 of tax-free earnings over 30 years. That's the power of compounding on a tax-free base. It's not a fantasy. It's a math problem that many high-income earners solve every year without even realizing they're doing tax arbitrage. Now let's address a common fear. What if the IRS cracks down on backdoor Roths? The answer is that the backdoor Roth is explicitly allowed by the tax code. The IRS has issued guidance, such as Revenue Procedure 2010-45, that clarifies the mechanics. The only real risk is failing to follow the pro-rata rule or making a conversion that triggers a larger tax bill than anticipated. Proper planning, record keeping, and if needed, professional advice keep you safely within the law. Another retention bump. Did you know that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 actually increased the incentive for Roth conversions by lowering ordinary income tax rates? When the rates dropped, many people found it cheaper to pay tax now and lock in a Roth, rather than risk higher rates later. That legislative change turned a modest strategy into a mainstream retirement planning pillar. Let's talk timing. The ideal moment to perform a backdoor Roth conversion is when your marginal tax rate is at its lowest. For many, that's during a year with reduced income, a job change, or a sabbatical. It can also be strategic during a market downturn. Converting when the account balance is low reduces the taxable amount if any pre-tax dollars are involved. For example, if Louis's traditional IRA balance dips to $2,000 during a market slump, converting the full $6,500 would only tax a small fraction, because the pre-tax portion is tiny. This timing trick can shave hundreds, even thousands, off the tax bill. Now consider the tax arbitrage angle. Arbitrage, in finance, means exploiting price differences between two markets to lock in a profit with minimal risk. The backdoor Roth is the retirement equivalent. You exploit the difference between the tax-deferred and tax-free worlds. By moving money from a tax-deferred bucket to a tax-free bucket at a low cost, you lock in a profit the future tax savings. The profit is deterministic. You know exactly how much tax you'll avoid based on your future tax bracket and the amount of growth you expect. That certainty is rare in investing and makes the strategy especially compelling. Let's quantify that certainty with a simple projection. Suppose Maya contributes $6,500 each year for 20 years, and her investments earn a 7% annual return. Without her Roth, the balance would be roughly $300,000, but she'd owe tax on the earnings when she withdraws. If we assume a 25% tax rate in retirement, the after-tax amount drops to about $225,000. With the Roth, the entire $300,000 remains untaxed. The difference $75,000 is the arbitrage profit. Scale that up to the mega backdoor Roth, where contributions can be $60,000 per year, and the tax savings can easily exceed $500,000 over a lifetime. Retention bump. The tax savings from a Roth can sometimes exceed the total amount you contributed. That sounds like free money, but it's really the power of compounding on a tax-free base. Now, let's address a scenario that trips many people up: the partial conversion strategy. Some retirees think they can convert only the after-tax portion of a traditional IRA each year, thereby spreading the tax hit. The IRS does not allow you to cherry-pick dollars. The pro rata rule applies to each conversion. If you have any pre-tax balance, each conversion will be partially taxable in proportion to the total pre-tax ratio. That's why the IRA cleanse rolling pre-tax money into a 401k before converting is so valuable. It lets you convert 100% of the after-tax dollars tax-free without having to calculate complex fractions each year. Let's bring in a real-world anecdote. A client of mine, Sarah, was 58 and had a traditional IRA balance of $120,000, of which $20,000 was after-tax contributions made over the years. She wanted to convert the after-tax portion to a Roth before age 70.5, but she also had a 401k that accepted rollovers. We rolled the $100,000 pre-tax balance into the 401k, leaving a $20,000 after-tax traditional IRA. She then converted the entire $20,000 to a Roth with zero tax due. 6 months later, her 401k balance grew to $115,000, and her Roth balance continued tax-free. By the time she reached 70.5, the combined tax-free assets were well over $300,000, a result she never thought possible when she first opened her IRA. Now, you might be thinking, all this sounds great, but what about the 5-year rule for Roth conversions? When you convert a traditional IRA to a Roth, the converted amount must sit in the Roth for 5 years before you can withdraw it penalty-free, unless you're over 59.5. That rule applies to each conversion separately. For most people, the 5-year clock isn't a problem because they're already past retirement age when they start converting. However, for younger savers, it's a detail worth tracking. The rule prevents people from using a conversion as a short-term tax shelter and then pulling the money out immediately. In practice, you can stagger conversions over several years, each starting its own 5-year clock, and still maintain flexibility. Retention bump. Did you know that the 5-year rule applies per conversion, not per account? That means you can have multiple conversions with overlapping clocks, giving you a rolling window of penalty-free access as you age. Let's talk about the tax bracket creep that makes Roth conversions even more attractive. As you climb the career ladder, your marginal tax rate often rises. If you wait until retirement to pay tax on traditional IRA withdrawals, you could be hitting a 35% or higher bracket, especially if you have other income streams like Social Security, pensions, or part-time work. By converting to a Roth while you're still in a 24% bracket, you lock in the lower rate. The difference between a 24% and a 35% tax bill on $100,000 of earnings is $11,000 money that stays in your pocket forever. Now consider the impact of required minimum distributions (RMDs). Traditional IRAs force you to start taking RMDs at age 73 as of 2024. Those mandatory withdrawals are taxed as ordinary income, regardless of whether you need the cash. Roth IRAs, on the other hand, have no RMDs during the owner's lifetime. By shifting assets into a Roth, you not only eliminate future tax on growth, you also dodge the forced RMDs that can push you into a higher tax bracket or cause unwanted spikes in taxable income. That's another layer of tax arbitrage. You control the timing and amount of your taxable income in retirement. Let's illustrate with a scenario involving a couple, the Parkers. Both are 72, each with a traditional IRA of $200,000. Their combined RMD for the year is roughly $16,000, which pushes them into a 24% marginal tax bracket. They also have a Roth IRA with $150,000 that they've been building via backdoor conversions for years. By converting an additional $30,000 from a traditional IRA to a Roth before the year ends, they reduce the amount that will be subject to RMDs next year. The conversion costs them tax now, but the next year's RMD drops to about $12,000, saving them $1,000 in tax. Over a decade, those savings compound, especially as the Roth continues to grow tax-free. Now let's address the elephant in the room, the potential for policy change. Some critics argue that Congress might close the backdoor Roth loophole, especially if it becomes more popular. While any future legislation could alter the landscape, the strategy has survived multiple tax reforms over the past few decades. Moreover, the Treasury and IRS have repeatedly affirmed the legality of the backdoor Roth. The prudent approach is to use the tool while it exists, just as you would take advantage of a favorable mortgage rate before it rises. Retention bump. Did you know that the backdoor Roth has been around since the early 2000s, surviving both the Bush tax cuts and the Obama-era reforms? Its longevity suggests it's more than a passing fad. Let's wrap up with a surprising twist. Many people think the backdoor Roth is only for the ultra-wealthy or for those with complex financial situations. In reality, the average middle-class earner can benefit, especially if they're disciplined about contributing after-tax dollars each year. Even a modest $3,000 annual contribution, converted each year for 30 years, can grow to over $300,000 tax-free. That's